The Source engine has a reputation amongst gamers. Some see it as a bug-infested hellscape, and some see it as an engine that's earned a place in history for its innovations in physics, lighting, AI, and more. Coming from somebody who's worked with the engine for a long time, I can understand both views. I think this status might have given partial rise to the amount of people in the Source technical community who are walking Dunning-Kruger effects. I could always be wrong though. Perhaps I would see that Source isn't actually special in this regard if I ever stepped into the domains of any other engine. But it seems like there's always at least one person in the comments of any Half-Life video trying to look smart, like they're an expert in the game or the engine. And they're so annoying because 99% of the time they're either wrong or saying something that's just not necessary at all. I find it the weirdest when people try it on my own videos since, well, it's not like I found all those facts on accident, you know. And while I could make this video be just about anyone, I want to show you the real cream of the crop, the worst offenders I've ever seen. So this first case comes from August 2004 on Valve Time, in a forum post about bullet penetration in Half-Life 2. We won't be focusing on the person who made the thread, but I do want to explain how this misconception came to be. They say that there's a scene in the trailer where bullets can be seen going through a wall. Let's look at that scene. So in case you missed it, look at this wall Gordon is hiding behind. Some bullet holes seem to appear out of nowhere, so it would look like Half-Life 2 does have bullet penetration. But if you've watched my channel before, you should know that there's nothing you can shoot through in Half-Life 2 except for grating and a few pieces of glass. These bullets are actually coming from this guy on the crane. But let's get to why we're really here. A guy named Romeo chimes in with a very interesting response. If you play the Counter-Strike Source beta, you'll see that you can shoot through the main door. Seems pretty weird to say that, right? What does Counter-Strike have to do with it? Well, apparently in this guy's mind, since CSS has bullet penetration, HL2 must as well. People try to explain to this guy that that's just not how things work, but he just won't listen. He responds back by saying that materials in Source have a thickness setting, which is true, but meaningless. The guns in Half-Life 2 could always just ignore the thickness setting and stop dead in their tracks the moment they hit a wall. But apparently Romeo doesn't care about this, cause he could walk circles around you about the Half-Life 2 tech. Yeah, he seriously said this. Remember that this is before the game even released. The Half-Life 2 beta did leak in 2003, but as far as I know, it didn't have Counter-Strike style bullet penetration, so I really don't know what this guy is on about. But apparently we can find proof of this guy's expertise on his website. Oh boy. I did manage to find the website, and honestly it was not very impressive. There were a few mapping tutorials, but most were not archived, and by today's standards they probably weren't very good anyway. You might be thinking that this guy was just a funny man epically owning the libs. Well, apparently after this incident he remained a normal user on Valve Time with no further conflicts. Imagine how this guy must have reacted when he learned the truth. This next story starts on November 20th, 2008, just a few days after Left 4 Dead released. This happened on the Valve Developer Community Wiki, which, for those unaware, is basically a website like Wikipedia but for the Source engine. On a discussion page, a user named Bobop asked for the method you're supposed to use to spawn zombies. A well-respected editor named Baliam, whose name I probably just butchered, says that the game decides where and what kind of zombies to spawn, which is true. Although there actually is a way to manually spawn zombies, but it's rarely used, and since it's only been a few days since release, I don't blame him for not knowing about it. Either way, the first guy, Bobop, isn't buying it. You can pause to read this whole thing if you want, it's pretty great, but to sum it up, Bobop accuses Baliam of making up inactriate gibberish. He also says that Baliam's idealism is an epic failure. He says that if zombies could spawn anywhere in a map, they would spawn outside of the map. But the truth is, no. Zombies will never spawn outside of the map because of something called the navigation mesh, which gives AIs an idea of how a level is shaped. This guy believes that it works in the same way as Half-Life 2 NPC spawns. In Half-Life 2, many NPCs only spawn when specific things happen, and those criteria are defined inside the level, not the game's internal logic. He then remembers that there's an entity which was used in Half-Life 2 to spawn NPCs at a random spot within an area. I think I know the entity he's talking about, and regardless of whether spawning infected like that actually works, it would be very tedious to do that throughout an entire level. This response caused Bobop to be accused of vandalism because in the past he committed vandalism. Bobop's alibi to spamming allegations is that he posts less than 100 times per year. When asked about other disruptive edits, he had this to say: "You're just pissed because I told you off in the discussion of how zombie spawns work. I made the one back in 2007 because that's when the Valve was updating SDK so damn much. And the last one does not even say a damn thing. Also, you, sir, are the only one that has came to me with bullcrap that is just things I have said. Whoopie-doo. I can do that to you as well if I wanted to, but I do not give a damn about your crap, so yeah." After that, nothing else happened. Surprisingly, he never got banned. You might wonder if this guy was also a funny man. He did edit his final message many times in order to make it less offensive. That doesn't seem like trolling behavior to me. Before we go into this one, we need a bit of background information. Brushes are simple pieces of geometry which are usually used to create very flat things, like floors and walls. Displacements come with a lot more vertices and are used to create things that would be cumbersome to make with brushes, mainly organic terrain. On the VDC page for displacements, a peculiar edit was made to the following sentence: "Displacements are primarily used to create terrain, hills, valleys, trenches, slopes, etc." A user by the name of Hammer Editor changed the word "are" to "were." In his edit summary, he stated, "In games for the last 10 years now, 99% of world design is mesh or mesh subdivisional geometry. Data type is not specific. Brush." The first editor to raise issue with this edit approached it with the idea that there was a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding. At the time of writing in 2005, BSP meshes were not used to build entire worlds. Only in the last 10 years in visual design has that become the norm. Up until now, displacement meshes would have been used to build valleys, slopes, terrain, etc., but the actual design element and data type of a drawn brush does need to be specified 15 years later. The fuck does that mean? For example, every level in a game could be built out of these binary space meshes. Before going into just how wrong that sentence is, I'd first like to show you how this man dug himself deeper and deeper into a hole of idiocy. Another editor tried to clarify the sentence by specifying that it is specifically in the source engine that displacements are used for the purposes outlined earlier, since it is true that nowadays most 3D software does use their own equivalent of displacements to make pretty much everything. Mr. Editor was not pleased with this. Whoever is reverting my changes needs to do Level Design 101 or even 3D design in general. He then repeated the same points that we've talked about before. He also left this monstrosity of a response on the talk page. I'm just going to read this whole thing out loud and you can try for yourself to extract meaning from it. In visual design, subdivision is the act of adding units of data between verts. For example, instead of having 1, 2, 3, 4, subdivision would equate to 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, etc. The Source Engine was the first open source engine to feature subdivisional blocks after Quake's Radiant. Citation needed. We no longer in game design full stop as opposed to just source use subdivided geometry to create valleys, hills, slopes, etc. These meshes are the foundation of level design, the meaning to amazing visuals, and the origin of 3D real-time sculpting. To say that 25 years after development in the binary space founding BIM Module 4, you probably need to Google that, subdivisional geometry is used for certain things is stupid. Absolutely stupid. Please do some research and enlighten yourself to subsurface division as defined in the Blendar Handbook. The link is now a 404 page. The Internet Archive reveals that it was a non-free tutorial. Also, please do look at the World International Visual Design Standard BIM and their wording as to what subdivision brushes are used for in this catalog book. The link is to some book that appears to be about architecture and engineering. I would never lie on the internet, so I didn't proceed any further. Finally, to encompass my findings with your edits to this wiki's subdivision geometry type page, I would like to show you some modern day engines that not only use multi-shaped polygonal meshes of subdivisional geometry, known as planes, shapes, solids, brushes. These are all the same thing with different terminology. See Unreal. Scroll down to the description that someone writes to explain these non-differences. This is just a tutorial about how to make a house in Unreal 4, and it does nothing to say anything about whatever this claim is. And then a link to the Wikipedia page for Polygon Mesh. Unreal, Unity, Havok all render brushes as subdivisional patches of world known as planes. We call them old school word brushes. I guess you can imagine brushes as a collection of planes. That is technically correct. Still no idea why this is being said. My game, which I am making on Source, is drawn nearly entirely out of displacements. Wow, so you're telling me that an idiot is capable of being an idiot? It is nearly 2021. Computers no longer have difficulty rendering smooth surfaces and lighting. 25 years we used displacement brushes, subdivided planes if you use AutoCAD or went to college. Oh, fucking brother. To create entire games. For example, Skyrim is 11 years old and uses 100% subdivided geometry meshes. Simply watch a developer video in which they explain the terrain/world generation. Whoa, you mean that a game on a different engine can do different things? Not to mention that it was created with different visual goals in mind? What a fucking insane concept. Call of Duty Black Ops uses their own equivalent of displacements, and yeah, all of the same points here again. We do not limit usage of subdivisional model design in level design today. Meshes are no problem for computers as of about 17 years ago. CAD said in 2007, subsurface displaced geometry prudently shows us the future of games visual design. Okay, so CAD is not like a group of people or something, it's just a term. And the quote that he says is in this paper is not actually there. It's not unreasonable to think that this guy is trolling, but you're going to see that he has some real commitment to this bit. Another editor chimes in to tell him, no. That's really all this message is saying, just no. Dr. Editor replied, negative on that, soldier. Heaven forbid we regard ourselves as artists or game designers of any sort if we are going to pretend that we are entrapped to act as though it is 15 years in the past. Subdivisional geometry is not non-Valve engine related. It is game design. Please do try to argue your point rather than just saying no to change, as that is known as a spectrum disorder. In the next reply, somebody finally laid out exactly why you can't do what this guy says. First, you have to make a brush to make a displacement. Displacements are made by selecting faces of brushes and then converting those faces into displacements. So this guy is just saying to add in this extra step every time you make a brush for no reason. Sewing, the tool that tries to make displacements connect seamlessly, is a bit finicky. In order to sew two displacements together, the underlying brushes that the displacements were made out of have to share a common edge, even though those brushes don't really impact anything else anymore. They still technically exist. I don't think this would actually matter much in this context, but it is just one more reason to not use displacements when you don't need to. Brushes are needed for several things, including triggers, water, literally all visibility optimization, making the map properly formed because you have to use brushes to define the boundary between your map and the outside void. Creating a displacement means that you will pretty much always be creating more tries than a brush face would make. A 12 triangle cube would become a 192 triangle cube for literally no fucking reason. The person mentioned a bug that's known to exist in CSGO, although I don't think it does exist anymore. Light can bleed through displacements. Here is a room that I made with brushes. Now here's the same room with all the brushes turned into displacements. So here is my crummy diagram showing why this happens. On both brushes and displacements, the lighting is stored in a grid of points, with each point having its own color data. The light bleeding happens because of this little segment here. The game thinks that this is one continuous surface, so it just kind of acts like it. I don't know exactly what happens. In fact, it actually bled further than I was expecting it to. But anyway, the light doesn't bleed through with brushes because the compiled tools are smart. They can recognize that there's a wall in the way, like this one here, so it just removes this bit of the surface here, making these two surfaces be completely separated. The same thing can't be done with displacements because you can't just delete part of a displacement in that way. Displacements that are large enough will have lower quality lighting. I don't really know much about this since I've just never run into the issue myself, so yeah. The number of displacements that you can have in a map is greatly limited. The maximum number of brushes that you can have in a map is 8,192. Let's be unrealistically generous and say that each brush only has one visible face. So you would need to use 8,000 displacements to make the same map with displacements instead of brushes. The maximum number of displacements is 2,048. I would also like to add myself that displacements must be quadrilaterals. Sir Editor responds by saying that he's not trying to influence what anybody does, when his goal here is to edit a sentence about when to use displacements. Personally, I just wouldn't have tried to make that claim. He then took the opportunity to brag about a tutorial that he wrote when an image from it was used to argue that he was not a likely candidate to run into any of the issues that were brought up when following his own advice. He then gave some sort of response to one of the issues that was brought up. For any other noob out there that is drawing brushes at irregular sizes and then wonder why BSP can't assign a patch child to an uneven brush, draw the brush correctly and engage segmentation after squared 256 units in any two directions. Duh. The impressive part of this response is that he actually does use the words patch and child correctly. However, the error being talked about comes from VRAD, not VBSP. The link goes to documentation for some piece of software called Wax, which as far as I'm aware has no relation to source and is not used by it in any way. In any case, this seems to be his source for the number 256. After messing around with a displacement in an empty map for a while, I could not find any relationship between the error message and the number 256. Oh, and a displacement brush is a brush. Numbnuts. He didn't acknowledge any of the other things that were said. He was then told to fuck off. He did not listen. He kept trying to edit the sentence to his liking, and at every turn other editors reverted his changes. In case you didn't notice, the initial edit was made on December 8th, and it was now December 16th. In his edit summary from April 16th, he said, "Cleanup in preparation for a new modern page about creating displacements." Incredible. Perhaps his only message where he didn't attempt to use big words to make himself sound smarter. In an incredibly rare move, an anonymous Valve employee personally reverted the edits made by His Majesty King Editor, and then banned him. I can't express to you just how rare this is. It has been years since somebody was banned for a non-spam reason. The next day he came back on a new account, edited the page, and got banned again. The next day he came back on a new account, edited the page, and got banned again. Two days later, he came back on a new account, edited the page, and got banned again. The Valve employee became tired of this and decided to protect the displacement page indefinitely, which meant that nobody could edit it until further notice. It remains protected to this day. Whether or not this was trolling, it was taken too far.
Welcome to
The end of the video.
I've been proud to call
This channel.
my home. And so, whether you are here to
Subscribe.
or passing through on your way to parts unknown,
Hit that like button. It really helps my channel. My game, which I am making on Source, is drawn nearly entirely out of entirely